Fly this chopper and I'll marry you." The CEO mocked a BLSK homeless man. Her voice sliced through the air like a cruel joke. A crowd of employees burst into laughter as she tossed him the challenge. A challenge she thought he'd never meet. His clothes were torn, his hands trembled from hunger, and his eyes, those deep, tired eyes, told stories of streets, storms, and survival. To them, he was just a nobody, a piece of trash begging outside the company's private hangar. But to her, this was entertainment. What she didn't know was that this man once sat behind the very controls she mocked him with. He had worn the same pilot's jacket she flaunted as all brand's luxury fashion. He had flown CEOs, dignitaries, and even presidents. But life had turned its back on him. As she mocked him under the bright sunlight, destiny waited patiently, ready to reverse the laughter. Because the world has a cruel sense of irony, and sometimes the man you humiliate in rags once carried you safely through the skies. The air was thick with the scent of jet fuel and arrogance. Workers in bright safety vests moved briskly across the private airfield, prepping for the big SkyVibe Aviation campaign shoot. The slogan, "Breaking Limits," was plastered across banners and billboards. Ironically, just outside the glossy hangar, sat a man whose life had been nothing but limits. Marcus Dean sat cross-legged on the concrete, a cardboard sign propped beside him that read, "Will work for food." His fingers were calloused, nails broken, the kind of hands that once held a flight stick with surgical precision. His face bore the weary lines of a man twice his age, though he was barely in his 40s. Sweat trickled down his temple as the sun scorched the pavement, but he didn't move. He wasn't begging. Not really, he was watching the silver helicopter parked just beyond the gates, its rotors gleaming under the sunlight. It wasn't just a machine to him, it was a memory, the same model he had once flown during his Air Force days, an H-60 Pave Hawk, the smell of aviation fuel, the metallic hum of its engine, the way the rotors cut through the air. Every sound, every vibration brought back flashes of who he used to be. Commander Marcus Dean, air rescue pilot. Call sign Falcon. Back when his uniform was crisp, his future limitless, and his skin color didn't define the value of his wings. A security guard approached, wrinkling his nose in disgust. "Hey, buddy, this is private property. You can't sit here." Marcus nodded politely, gathering his few belongings. "I understand, sir. Just needed a bit of shade. Shades for paying clients." The guard muttered, waving him off like a stray dog. Marcus stood and walked toward the chain-link fence, but his eyes never left the helicopter. The way its nose tilted slightly to one side, he could tell the calibration was off. The mechanic would find that later, he thought. Old habits never die. Across the field, a black SUV pulled up, its tinted windows glinting under the sun. The chatter stopped. Everyone straightened. Out stepped Vivian Carter, the CEO, the legend. The woman whose face appeared on magazine covers with headlines like "The Queen of the Skies." She was tall, immaculate, her white suit perfectly tailored. Her platinum blonde hair was tied back in a sleek bun, not a strand out of place. Her confidence was like armor, sharp, polished, untouchable. "All right, people," she called out, clapping her hands once. "Let's make this quick. The world doesn't wait for mediocrity." Her tone carried the kind of authority that made even grown men shrink. But her eye scanning the area landed on Marcus. A flicker of irritation crossed her face. "Ooh, let that in here," she said coldly. "This is a professional shoot, not a charity drive." Marcus froze. He could feel every gaze shift toward him. The workers he had watched quietly moments ago now looked away, pretending not to notice. His throat tightened, but he forced himself to speak. "I didn't mean to interrupt, ma'am. I used to fly one like that. Just admiring your..." Her hand shot up, silencing him mid-sentence. Her lips curled into a mocking smile. "You used to fly one?" she repeated, her voice dripping with disbelief. "That's rich." Her assistants chuckled softly behind her. Someone whispered, "Maybe he thinks he's still in the Air Force." The laughter spread like wildfire. Marcus lowered his gaze, jaw tightening. He wasn't angry, not yet. He had seen worse, felt worse. But something about her tone, that easy cruelty, the way she dismissed him without a second thought, it stirred something deep inside. A wound he thought had long healed. The same wound that began years ago when a single false report had ended his career. When they said a black man like him couldn't possibly be fit to lead a mission. When his reputation was torn apart faster than he could defend himself. And now, here he was reduced to a joke in front of strangers, a pilot turned ghost, mocked in the shadow of the machine he once commanded. But Marcus didn't move. He just kept watching the helicopter like a soldier staring at his lost weapon, waiting for the day he'd hold it again. Vivian tilted her head, the afternoon sun catching on her diamond earrings as if even the light itself bowed to her. Her smirk widened, the kind that wasn't born of humor but of dominance. The satisfaction of putting someone in their place. She turned to her assistant, a young man in a tailored navy suit, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Make sure someone clears this up. We can't have people thinking random beggars can fly our machines." The crew laughed again, their voices mixing with the hum of the helicopter's idle engine. Marcus stood still, his shadow stretching long across the asphalt. He had endured ridicule before. But this cut differently. There was something about her tone, the dismissive tilt of her chin, that twisted the knife deeper. He swallowed hard, forcing a calm he didn't feel. "Ma'am," he said, his voice rough but steady, "I mean no disrespect, but I really can fly that helicopter." Vivian turned back to face him, her expression dripping with disbelief. You don't even have shoes that match. And you're talking about flying a multi-million-dollar aircraft?" Her laughter was sharp, practiced, the kind of sound designed to humiliate. "Tell you what," she added, stepping closer until her perfume hit him like a wall. "You fly this chopper, and I'll marry you myself." The louder this time was louder, crueler. The security guard chuckled under his breath. Someone pulled out their phone and started recording. Vivian didn't care she wanted an audience. It was sport to her, to make a man who had nothing feel even smaller. Marcus didn't respond. He didn't even blink. His eyes stayed fixed on the helicopter, as though her words were just static. For a moment, a strange silence fell. The spinning blades above cast rhythmic shadows across his face, highlighting every crease, every scar, every ounce of dignity that still clung to him despite everything. Vivian raised an eyebrow, annoyed that he wasn't reacting. "What's wrong?" she said mockingly. "Set got your wings." A few of the crew members laughed again, though some were starting to shift uncomfortably. There was something unnerving about how calm Marcus remained, how still he stood, not angry, not broken, just unyielding. Finally, he spoke, his voice quieter now but sharper somehow. "Sometimes people forget what others are capable of until they see it with their own eyes." Vivian's expression faltered for half a second, just a flicker. But she quickly masked it with a scoff and turned to her team. "All right, everyone, back to work. Let's not waste our time on fairy tales." She began barking orders again, commanding attention, restoring her control over the moment. The photographers adjusted their lenses, the stylists fussed over the lighting, and the laughter slowly died out. Marcus remained where he was, his hands in his pockets, eyes locked on the helicopter's rotors. Beneath his calm exterior, his mind began to stir, not with anger, but with something sharper, purpose. Because if life had taught him anything, it was that humiliation can be fuel. And though she thought she was looking down on a broken man, what stood before her was a man who had fallen from the sky, and still remembered exactly how to get back there. The tension thickened as the air buzzed with urgency. The assistant rushed toward Vivian, whispering frantically, "Mom, we've got a problem. The pilot's car broke down on the highway. He won't make it in time." Vivian's jaw tightened. She hated delays, hated anything that reminded her she wasn't in control. "We can't afford that," she snapped. "We've got the press coming in 2 hours and a full crew on payroll. Get someone else." "There is no one else," the assistant replied, his voice small. "Not today." Vivian pinched the bridge of her nose. "Unbelievable. Do I have to do everything myself?" She turned toward the helicopter, muttering curses under her breath, and that's when she heard him again. The calm, steady voice that refused to be ignored. "I told you, Mom," Marcus said, stepping closer, his tone neither pleading nor arrogant. "I can fly it." Vivian spun around, exasperated. "You again. What part of no do you not understand?" She gestured toward the hangar crew. "Can someone escort this man out before he embarrasses himself further?" But before anyone could move, an older man emerged from the maintenance tent. He had a grease-streaked face, silver hair, and a weary authority that came from decades in the industry. His eyes narrowed as he studied Marcus. "Hold on," he said. "What's your name, son?" "Marcus Dean," came the quiet reply. The man's gaze sharpened, disbelief flickering across his face. "Marcus Dean from the Air Force?" Vivian looked puzzled. "You know him." The mechanic nodded slowly. "Knew him. He trained half the rescue pilots in the country. This man flew through hurricanes when others wouldn't even take off. If that's really him, you might want to listen." A heavy silence fell over the hangar. Vivian's laughter died in her throat. She stared at Marcus, her pride caught somewhere between denial and realization. "You expect me to believe this man was a military pilot?" she asked, though her voice had lost some of its edge. Marcus met her gaze evenly. "I don't expect you to believe me, ma'am. Just let me prove it." Vivian hesitated. Pride battled practicality. The cameras were ready, the shoot delayed, and the helicopter sat there wasting time. Against her better judgment, or maybe because she wanted to watch him fail, she finally said, "Fine, you want to play pilot? Go ahead. But if you crash it, that's on you." Marcus didn't flinch. He walked toward the aircraft, slow but deliberate, each step steady despite the eyes burning holes into his back. The guards exchanged uneasy glances. The crew muttered under their breath. Inside the cockpit, the familiar scent of hydraulic fluid and metal filled his lungs. His hands moved instinctively, running across the switches and dials as if greeting old friends. The headset fit perfectly. The years melted away, and for the first time in forever, Marcus felt like himself again. The blades began to turn, slicing through the air. The roar grew louder, stronger. The ground trembled beneath everyone's feet. Vivian stepped back, her expression a cocktail of fear and disbelief. Dust whipped around her heels as the helicopter lifted gently off the ground, steady and graceful, as though it had been waiting for him all along. The helicopter hovered effortlessly above the airfield, its blades cutting through the afternoon air with a rhythmic hum that silenced everyone below. The noise was deafening, yet in that roar was something strangely beautiful. Mastery, precision, control. Marcus held the controls like a man reunited with his purpose. His movements were fluid, instinctive. Every adjustment, every rotation was smooth, confident, exact. Down on the tarmac, the same workers who had laughed minutes ago stood frozen, shielding their eyes from the dust storm his takeoff created. Phones that had been raised to mock him were now filming in awe. Vivian stood with her arms crossed, but her face betrayed her. Her lips parted slightly, her brow furrowed, her earlier smirk long gone. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke. This was skill. The kind of skill you couldn't fake. The kind born from thousands of flight hours, from danger, discipline, and dedication. The helicopter arced smoothly through the sky, performing a controlled spin, then dipped low enough for everyone to feel the push of wind on their faces. It was graceful yet powerful, like a dance choreographed between machine and man. For a moment, even Vivian forgot herself. She wasn't the CEO commanding attention anymore. She was just another spectator watching a story rewrite itself midair. Through the headset radio, Marcus's calm voice broke the tension. "Miss Carter, permission to land." Vivian blinked, startled by the formality of it. Yes," she stammered, her usual composure slipping. "Permission granted." The chopper descended gently, touching down so smoothly that the landing skids barely made a sound against the concrete. When the blades finally slowed, a stunned quiet fell over the field. The crew broke into hesitant applause, the kind that started awkwardly but grew louder with each passing second. Someone whistled. Someone else shouted, "That was insane!" Marcus stepped out slowly, brushing the dust from his jacket. His face was calm, unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, not pride exactly, but a quiet reclaiming of dignity. Vivian took a few steps forward, speechless for once. How did you end up like this?" she finally asked, her tone softer, unsure. Marcus looked at her, his expression steady. "When you look like me," he said, his voice even. "The world doesn't always forgive your mistakes. One accusation, one bad day, that's all it takes." They didn't need proof, just a reason. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. No one dared move. Even the sound of distant engines seemed to fade. Vivian lowered her eyes for the first time, unable to meet his gaze. The truth of his words stung deeper than any insult could. Cameras were still rolling, the same ones that were meant to capture a glamorous CEO showcasing her company's power. But now, they had recorded something real, something raw. A moment of reckoning. Vivian knew this footage could ruin her reputation, expose her arrogance. Yet deep down, a part of her also knew it might be the first honest story her company had ever told. The applause slowly faded, replaced by a hum of murmurs and shuffling feet. The shock of what they'd just witnessed still clung to the air. Vivian stood motionless, her heart thudding harder than she wanted to admit. Her staff avoided her eyes, uncertain whether to congratulate the man she had just humiliated or to pretend none of it had happened. The once commanding CEO, who always seemed unshakable, now felt the ground beneath her shift. For the first time in years, she wasn't in control of the narrative, and that terrified her. By evening, the clip had already begun to spread. Someone from the crew had uploaded it before the cameras even cooled. The caption was simple but explosive. "Homeless man flies CEO's helicopter like a pro, shocks entire company." Within hours, it had gone viral. News outlets picked it up. Social media exploded with comments, outrage, admiration, disbelief. Words like racism, redemption, and justice filled the feeds. Vivian's PR team scrambled, but there was no stopping it. At the airfield, the lights had dimmed. The workers were gone. Only two figures remained, Marcus sitting by the hangar door, watching the sun dip below the horizon, and Vivian standing a few feet behind him, silent. For once, she didn't have an audience. No cameras, no assistants, no armor made of wealth and power. Just her and the man she had mocked. She hesitated before speaking, her voice quieter than it had been all day. "I'm sorry," she said. The words sounded foreign in her mouth. "For how I treated you. For judging you." Marcus didn't turn around. He watched the fading light reflect off the helicopter's windshield. "Don't be sorry for me," he said calmly. "Be sorry for everyone who never got the chance to prove themselves because of how they look, because they didn't fit what the world wanted them to be." Vivian swallowed hard. His words weren't angry. They were simply true, and that truth cut deeper than any accusation. She wanted to respond, to defend herself somehow, but she couldn't. All her justifications, her upbringing, her environment, her ignorance, felt small and hollow now. After a long pause, she spoke again. "You're the best pilot I've ever seen. If you'll have it, the job's yours." Marcus finally turned, study in her face. For a brief moment, neither spoke. There was no triumph in his expression, no gloating, just quiet understanding. "I'll take it," he said softly, "but not for your company. I'll fly for what it stands for now, for every man and woman who was told they never could." A gust of wind swept across the tarmac, rustling the edges of his cardboard sign still lying near the hangar. Vivian picked it up, staring at the words, "We'll work for food." Her throat tightened. That sign, a symbol of his fall, was now a reminder of her own blindness. In the days that followed, the world kept talking. Reporters called Marcus a hero. Others called him a miracle. But Marcus didn't care about the headlines. He had found something bigger than fame, his wings again, and this time, no one could take them away. Weeks later, Marcus Dean became the face of a new campaign, Rise Above. But this time, it wasn't Vivian's idea, it was his. He used the platform to start a foundation that trained underprivileged youth, especially those of color, in aviation and engineering. He taught them how to dream higher than the limits society sets. As for Vivian, she changed too. The arrogant CEO who once mocked a man for his skin now funded scholarships in his name. But she knew some scars couldn't be erased, only acknowledged. And sometimes, acknowledgement is where healing begins. The story of Marcus Dean spread across the world, not just as a story of redemption, but as a reminder that every person you look down upon carries a history you don't know. Because in a world obsessed with status, race, and appearance, true greatness often hides in rags, waiting for one moment, one chance to rise again. So the next time you're tempted to judge someone by where they are, remember, they might just be on their way back to the sky.